You're about to hear me introduce somebody in a way that you've never heard me introduce somebody before. I'll say this. Today in studio, I have one of the greatest men I know. My personal pastor. We're talking about fatherhood. We're talking about masculinity. And I promise you, there is good wisdom in there, stuff that could be life-changing for you and for all those people entrusted in your care. Josh McPherson, you are here. You're coughing. And we're ready to start the show. No, we've done too many. We've started the show. We've screwed up like 4 times. This is real.
We're committed.
This is raw.
We're totally in.
And it's actually really serious. Stop it.
Sorry.
Holy cow. All right.
Here
Very
we are.
good. You have lots to share. I wanted to start by talking about a very serious issue, but you won't stop giggling.
That's because you told me I look like halitosis smells.
You look like halitosis smells.
I haven't recovered.
That's the most savage insult.
I totally agree.
I just came up with it. It's brutal.
It's amazing. We just gave it to the internet.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You look like halitosis smells.
Yeah. No recovery.
That's savage. Are you ready to jump in?
I'm totally ready.
Because it's a serious subject.
Yes.
All
What's
right.
the subject
very good.
again? Yeah.
Years and years ago,
Yeah.
I was reading an Eldridge book, Wild at Heart, you know,
Yes.
the classic work.
Yep.
And he said something that sideswiped me. I thought, that's a pretty crazy thing to say. That's an irresponsible thing to say. He said this, something to the effect of, every man has a wound, and that wound is inflicted by his father. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, whoa, what a wide sweeping statement to say to everyone who reads. You'd make that assumption. Everyone has a father wound. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I wanted you to speak on the father wound. How ubiquitous is that? How awful is that? Where does that come from? And talk to me about father wounds.
Well, it's a huge topic. My reference point is as a pastor, Christian, that's my worldview. Obviously, everyone listening is going to be able to pick up something of value from what I'm going to say, but just all cards on the table, that's my starting point. I say that because that's given me, over the last 25 years, about 15,000 hours in crisis counseling situations, meeting with every kind of different type of man.
So this is less like, whereas a lot of us would just wax theoretical. I'm like, well, this is what I think, and this is my experience with my dad. You're looking at the experience of over 15,000 dads and relationships of like a wild amount of depth. So you're seeing the trends. You're seeing the worst of the worst. You're seeing the best of the best, and you're seeing everything in between. To me, was Eldridge being reckless when he made that statement?
No, he was being prophetic. He was being absolutely prophetic in the sense that the most important person in every person's life is their dad.
Well, I'd immediately shoot back. I'm like, well, I love my dad.
Yep.
My wife is the most important person in my life.
Yeah, I would say she's the most important person in your life now.
Okay.
But the person that gave you your emotional framework and your worldview reference point was your dad.
Why is it
good
not,
or bad?
Why is it not the mom? What about absentee kind of dads, and they're not around much? And then it's really, I was raised more by my mom. Someone might say, I'm not saying me. I'm just saying.
Yep. What I would tell them is, you were shaped more by the empty chair at the end of the table where your dad was supposed to be than you even know.
Oof. And there's a father wound right there. And it's not something he did, it's something he didn't.
There's different kinds of ways the Bible says you can sin, or the world will say you can make mistakes.
Okay.
Whatever category you want to use, I don't care. I can make a mistake by things I do that I shouldn't do. I shouldn't walk up to someone and just randomly punch them in the face. Hey, you shouldn't do that. You can actually go to jail for that.
Yeah.
So that the Bible called that a sin of commission. We'd call that like breaking the law or being overtly and unsocially aggressive. The other kind of mistakes you can make is things that you should do that you don't do.
Yeah.
Right. And so if your children were made with a need to be affirmed by a father. Oh. That's just built into the DNA of every human being. And when the absence of that affirmation exists, they're going to look to have that affirmation filled with something or someone else. And the problem is where they look to have that affirmation met is oftentimes in things that are destructive. Wow. And so in the absence of a father doing his job, those children, I mean, we're not even going to talk about like the mom who's trying to play two roles, which is just impossible. But then those children go out and they look for the affirmation that the dad was supposed to fill in something or someone else, and very rarely do those things they look to for affirmation have their best interest in mind like a dad would have.
What are they typically looking for? Where are they finding that validation?
Oh, it's in all the typical stuff, from drugs and sex to power and prestige to affirmation from peers to, a coach that gives them attention. It could be any one of a number of things.
Yeah.
But so when I think about, and that's kind of hard pivot, but when I think about a dad's role in the life of a young man specifically, that's one of my passions, is because I think the problem is we have an absence of strong men in our culture.
Right.
So
and our society is dying from it. It's like number one cause of death, lack of masculinity,
100%,
strong masculinity.
100%. So in the absence of strong masculinity, society craters. Yeah. So I think the number one solution to all of the social ills that we have is for the rise of strong men, not abusive men, strong men. Yeah. Strong men it means you're dangerous, but you're under control. Yeah. Right, you have, like we talked about earlier, you have self-mastery.
Right.
Because there's no maturation without self-control exercise. And so we need men who are strong and capable of doing hard things, dangerous things, and all that's under control of a worldview and self-control. So, but fathers and sons, when I think about like your two boys, my two boys, they were born with a relational center of gravity, and it's you and I. That's just how the world works. We're going to create for them a center of gravity that they orbit around. The question then becomes, what are they orbiting around? So when I talk to dads about how to become fathers, I tell them the first thing you have to do is get a meaningful life, because your son's going to want to follow you, be like you, look like you, sound like you. And if you're not worth looking like, sounding like, and following, then you have no starting point or starting place or reference point to be a good dad. So the first step in being a good dad is to be a good man. Because as a dad, you're trying, again, we're talking about sons here specifically. As a dad, you're trying to raise boys to be men. Mm-hmm. But if you don't even know what it means like to be a man, you have no prayer at all in raising them to be a good man. So you got to first figure out for yourself what it means to be a good man, and then pursue that with all of your might, and then turn around and invite your boys to follow you.
So we've got a lot on the table there of like, all right, I see father wound stuff.
Yep.
I see rites of passage. I want to talk more about that.
Yep.
And then how do you be a good man? How do you find good mission? What if somebody is just kind of like, hey, I'm working my beat here, and I'm married, and it's a little bit Groundhog Day, and I don't feel that big purpose. I don't have this grandiose mission. Where's the romance? What do I do here? What if I feel stuck? And so we've got three major topics on the table. I'd love to return to father wound just a moment there before we jump into the others. And what do you say to somebody who is like, no, my dad's great. I don't feel any big father wound. I think everything's well. And so
that could be totally the case. I mean, it's not like every dad's a dirtbag.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the flip side of father wound, and this I'll play, even though I hate the phrase devil's advocate, I think every dad is probably doing the best he can do with what he had to work with. And so when I've met men and dealt with dads who are terrible dads and terrible husbands, at first I get angry because I want to protect the people they're hurting.
Yeah.
And then when I move in on him, start asking questions, I realize, my gosh, this guy is a broken, wounded, hurting man. And I start asking questions about his dad. Well, he's an alcoholic, and I'd walk in on him raping my mom, and I'd beat him off of her with a baseball bat one time. And you're like, oh my gosh, how old were you? Yeah. I was 9. So, oh my gosh.
Wow, yeah.
And then you realize, like, this guy is broken. So broken people break things, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And so, and that's the long tail of a broken man.
Right.
Is that the people underneath him are going to be broken, and they'll in turn break things.
Maybe in that context, you can cut dad a little bit of slack to him, because like maybe in all the things that you need, in all your hierarchy, and all the ways you could judge dad, of like, he did a lot better than grandpa, though.
Oh,
he did
100%,
a lot better than great-great-grandpa. And I think folks, in focusing on what they didn't get from their dad, or how they were hurt, or how they were whatever, wounded, they don't cut enough slack of like, but did he do anything good?
Yeah.
What were some of those good things? And so you got father wounds, but you also have father blessings. And
that's
like,
exactly right.
This morning over breakfast, I was talking about all the gifts my dad gave me. He taught me how to focus and work circles around everybody else. And so like really redeeming kind of things there. And
absolutely,
I wonder if that helps with everyone's got a father wound.
Yep.
Some of those wounds are really bad, and some of them
Yep.
are, there's a whole lot of them.
Yep.
And you got to deal with that.
Yep.
And, but maybe one part of it is recognizing the good stuff, because there's always going to be good stuff.
Well,
But I wonder, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I think every dad is genuinely trying to do the best he can with what he has. Some guys don't have very much to work with. No reference point, no resources, no tools, no experiences. But some of the best dads I've met, bro, never had a dad. Yeah. And this is where I'd come back to my Christian reference point to say, like, in order to be a good dad, you have to have had a good dad. And if you didn't have a good earthly father, I would say as a pastor, there's a heavenly father you can tap into and learn from.
That's good.
And draw from, right? And that heavenly father can then heal some of the wounds of the earthly father. But to finish my point as devil's advocate, even with the dads, even with the men who had horrible dads, as we start talking, they can find things their dad did well.
Yeah.
And part of the father wound makes you focus on only the negative and not the positive.
That's right.
What are some things your dad did well? Well, he always tried, and they start listing off things, and compared to where their dad started, he made progress.
Yeah.
He made progress, and that should be celebrated and honored. And I say, how many times have you gone back and thanked your dad? Did you starve to death? Well, no, you're here.
Yeah.
You ate food.
Yep.
At least your dad did that. He didn't do much else, but he provided. And that's a noble thing.
That's great.
Because he had a dad who didn't provide and left his family in shambles or whatever it is. And so looking for ways that your dad, looking for evidences of grace in things your dad did well, and then honoring him with that. Because what I see, different seasons of men's life, when they get to 45, 50, 55, 60, they can look back and they can look at the data, and they know whether or not they've been a good man or not by the relationships under them, how their kids are doing. And most men deal not with a I crushed it complex. Most men deal with I suck complex. Yeah. And so there's this massive amount of shame that men 15 older are carrying, because now they have enough data points to convict them of the fact, at least in their mind, that they think they failed. And so one of the things that can begin healing that wound in a 50-year-old man is a 30-year-old son to come along and say, hey, Dad, I just wanted you to know, like, with what you had to work with, I'm so proud of you. I'm so grateful. I have seen grown men break down weeping and crying because a son would come and just honor them and affirm them. And the irony is they're getting from their son the affirmation they never got from their dad.
That's great. You're breaking that cycle, aren't you?
Oh, 100%.
But that sets you free from that father wound as well. Of like, if you got the father wound, one thing that would be really bad is you just like, no, I'm good, I'm fine, it's whatever, and you just don't think about it. And like,
yep, embrace it. If you acknowledge it and then forgive your dad. Now that's a huge step for guys to take, because they're like, this guy is responsible for my worst moments and for my deepest pain. The last thing I'm going to do is let him off the hook. Yeah. And when men say that, they're exposing the fact that they don't understand the nature of forgiveness.
Yeah, because
forgiveness doesn't let him off the hook; it lets you off the hook.
That's great. Yeah,
right. Unforgiveness is refusing. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yeah.
Right. Unforgiveness actually kills you, not them.
That's great.
And so when you can forgive your dad, you're letting yourself off the hook of being his judge and jury, and you're giving him over to the consequences of his own life to be judged by whether you think it's a higher power or life circumstances, or we would believe, God in heaven. You say, I'm releasing myself of the burden and obligation to be his life's consequences, and I'm freeing myself just to love him for who he is.
That's great.
And man, that frees you up then. And so in forgiving him of how he wounded you, you can free him from the wounds of his father as well. Forgiveness works up and down.
So good.
You can unleash freedom into your whole family chain.
Rock on, man.
I mean, it's crazy, bro. This is a wild observation. I read the book, I'm going to forget the title. The Cost of
the Warrior
These Dreams.
Poet Way. Oh.
The Warrior Poet. That was an amazing book. Shameless plug. Look at camera.
Get out of here. Get out of here. It was a joke.
Sorta.
No, it wasn't. Clearly, that's not the book you were searching for. Clearly not.
What was that book? Yeah. The
Bible? Ever heard of it?
Ever heard of it? Speak more. Tell me more. The Cost of These Dreams. I forget the name of the author. You can Google it. He's a writer for SportsCenter, ESPN. Yeah. Really good writer. And he acknowledges that because of his own life circumstances, he's fascinated with the life impact of a father in the heart of a son. And so he writes about these prolific athletes and coaches. And his observation is all of these driven men are driven because they're looking for affirmation in money, in coaching staffs, in accolades that they never got from their dad.
Wow.
And he drills down on it in a really profound way. I don't think he's a Christian. He's just a really astute observer of humanity.
Yeah.
And he talks about the drive that made these men successful in the eyes of the world is the same drive that makes them unlivable with at home.
Wow. So here's the thing of we have a warped view of success because some people could hear what you just said and I'm like, well, look, this dad produced this pro athlete. And perhaps if, you're affirming and coddling people, your kids in all these right ways, they wouldn't have won that trophy. They wouldn't have been this wonderful success in this.
The most success, and you've had a chance to be around, like the most successful people. I've got to be around wildly successful businessmen. We're talking like private jet, hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah. Wildly, the most, and this isn't blanket true, but in my experience, the most successful men I've been around are the most wounded.
Yeah.
Like they're being like they're being driven by a dad who walked out and kicked over the woodpile and said, "Try again," and walked off.
Meaning
because they didn't stack the woodpile like their dad wanted. And bro, they've been trying to get the woodpile right for the last 40 years.
Meaning the person, they grow up under that wound, always reviling under it, competing because it's never enough. They're searching for an affirmation, an accomplishment or money or power that they can never actually be satisfied with. Never. And so one day maybe they climb up the upper ranks of all these sports events, they get their gold medal and they're completely miserable with it and their life is self-destructing.
Well,
is that
100%?
That's
like I've been around. Like so, my story. I adore my dad.
Yeah,
my dad is my hero. I won't talk about it because I get emotional.
Yeah,
I love my dad. Wildly successful man because I have a mom who's deeply cherished and loved and thriving at 74, and I have a brother who I'm in deep relationship with, and we have a family that loves each other and has given our lives to meaningful work together in the family business.
Yep.
Wildly successful.
I love your family.
We don't own a private jet, but we are wildly happy.
Yeah, you are.
And so I look at my dad and I think that's awesome. I look at some of my peers and I think, my gosh, you're exhausting. Why are you running so hard? And my life, I run pretty hot.
Yeah.
Got a few things going, but I don't run that hard. Right. I don't have like a drive that would cause me to sacrifice things around me in order to attain something.
See, a lot of people would look like hustle culture particularly would look at that and be like, no, you got to get out and earn and push, work harder than everybody else and crush. And and usually
hustle culture is stupid. Yeah.
I hate hustle culture because it destroys men while making them think that they're growing.
100%.
Yeah.
Here's the litmus test for manhood. If you're succeeding most at the easiest things, I have no respect for you.
What's the easiest things?
Working out 3 hours a day.
Yeah, that is. And it's pure vanity too.
Yeah.
Unless you have like, hey, you have a calling, you're going to be a MMA fighter. And that's like your job. Like in the military, I worked out twice a day.
Yeah.
Oftentimes different types of workouts, obviously.
Yeah.
But that was my job was fitness, tactics.
I got buddies in law enforcement and
it's a different gig.
You're not like, my profession demands and my life depends on me being in shape. And so for the sake of me doing my job well and being here in the long run for my family, I'm going to work out.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think we as men have a moral obligation to be physically fit in order to be good protectors. 100%.
Yeah.
And nothing against that at all.
And in almost all areas of your life will be improved somewhat if you get in shape.
Absolutely.
Like you lost some on your waistline and now the missus is going to notice and she will reward you for that. It's
maybe.
Clue. Whatever. Don't say maybe. That'll be a good thing, right?
Yeah. If she's loved and affirmed and listened to and protected, bro, you're getting rewarded.
That's so true. And it's better and right. But what I said was more fun and more provocative.
Culture, bro.
I totally
you're
did.
Feeding the problem.
I am what's wrong with this show. Like, unsubscribe. Hypocrite right here. But you rescued us, Josh.
Yeah, we pulled it out.
You just rescued us.
We pulled it out.
You rescued me.
Let's go.
Does that make you a hero?
I don't know. Yes.
All right, continue. This is great stuff.
Yeah. What I was going to say was if you as a man succeed at the easiest things, I don't necessarily respect you. Easiest things: abs, money, power, position. Like you can get those things. The hard things: can you win a woman? And can you keep her one for a lifetime?
It is the thing that I look at the most. If I can see a man who has a wife and that's flourishing and their kids are good, I don't really need to know anything else.
It's not hard.
You're annihilating life right there. And,
it's not hard.
And a faith system is going to be accompanied because I don't believe you can do that
100%.
without.
Well, you have to have moral grounding because it's going to require self-control to not do things
and self-sacrifice
that would cause her to not want to be with you.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna choose to gratify, the Bible calls it desires of the flesh.
Yeah.
If you're gonna choose to constantly saying yes to all the whims of your hormones and drives, then you won't be the kind of man, a kind of woman like that will want to be with long. So here's what I tell guys: like it is not impressive if you can talk a weak-willed and emotionally vulnerable girl into sleeping with you one time. That's not hard at all.
Yeah.
Anybody can take advantage of a woman. It takes a man to win a noble woman and then keep her one for a lifetime.
That's great.
Like that's hard.
Yeah.
It takes a man to be emotionally present so that his children feel loved. Because here's the question I'll ask kids all the time: does your dad love you? And they'll go, yeah. And then I'll ask a second question, and this is a very different question: do you feel loved? And 8 out of 10 times they'll go, well, not really, but I know he loves me.
Wow.
There's a wild difference between a child intellectually knowing you love them or them telling themselves you love them because they want to think you love them and them feeling loved. And therein lies the challenge of a man. And so when I talk to husbands and wives in a counseling scenario, the wife will be talking about their things. And I'll ask her, I said, do you feel loved by your husband? And she'll say, well, no. And he'll say, well, that's not fair. I said, bro, that's the whole game.
Yeah.
Your job is to live in such a way as to make her feel loved. So the simple question that I ask my wife all the time that most men have never asked their wife is, what do I do to make you feel loved?
Yeah.
Or what do I do to make you not feel loved? And the answer always surprises me because I think buy her a nice house, put her in a nice car, make sure, I look good in the mirror, whatever. And she's going to say things like, when you listen to me talk about stuff I know you probably don't care about, and then you ask me follow-up questions because you were actually listening, that makes me feel loved.
That's cool, yeah.
I'm like, that's easy.
Yeah. Well, she'll reward you for that.
Yeah. It's like, hey, now we're building trust. Now there's warmth in the relationship. So it's actually not as hard as you might think to be a good man, but it takes a selflessness that most men don't possess.
I like that. So we've talked about father wound.
Yeah.
And now is the horrifying part. What wounds am I accidentally giving my sons? Mm-hmm. If that's true for me, surely I'm passing something on of like, what? And so now I'm worried about what are my blind spots?
Yep. Okay. Well, a couple of questions. So types of dads first, and then how to mitigate wounds second. So there are absent dads who just aren't present physically or emotionally or spiritually. So there's some dads that aren't present because they've left or they're too busy at work. There's some dads who are home but on their phone, so they're not present emotionally, which is almost worse. If you're not there physically, at least you're not there.
Yeah.
But when you're there but not there, when you're in the room but not present, you're telling the kid, what I'm looking at on this screen, whatever it happens to be, is more important than you.
And I know the sports scores from various teams. No idea what my kids are studying, learning, or really interested in right now.
Because it's
I couldn't name 5 of their friends.
Yeah,
but the names of all the sports players.
Yeah, it's just a total, which is a different sidetrack. But most men have a better plan for their fitness and their diet than they have for their sons.
Oh, that's awful.
And that drives
terrible.
me nuts.
What a warped priority system.
Yeah, and so and the kids feel that, and when the kids watch dad rattle off facts about his fake football team he's got on his phone, or laughing at endless scrolling of YouTube videos, but never turn and ask them about their day or ask them how they're doing, they intuitively know that whatever he's doing out there is infinitely more important than me because we give our time to what we think is most important. Yeah. And so if you give your time to something other than me, what you're telling me is that I'm not important. That's devastating to the psyche of a child. And so one of the things that my dad was brilliant at, we're kind of over the map here, my dad was brilliant at tapping into what motivated me. And so he would ask questions. He knew me better than anyone on the planet. And this is the crazy thing is dads are flushing down the toilet the natural influence God, I believe, has given them in the life of their son because their son wants to please nobody more than their dad. There's no coach, no teacher, no mom. It's like, I want dad's approval. I want dad to like me. And I want dad to be excited about what I'm doing. And when dad takes that influence and flushes it down the toilet, it takes 10 coaches to replace him.
Yeah.
You're going to say something.
That's great. No, I was just saying, and that's dad's job until you're 18, and then you're out of the house and he's done. Mm-hmm. True or false?
False. It just changes.
Okay.
So so right now, so as my sons were growing up, they needed boundaries. They need safety, provision, boundaries, rules. This is what we do, what we don't do, and then they need consequences. Because children are born, and this will be wildly controversial, I believe children are born foolish. The Bible says sinful and fallen.
Yeah.
Let's call it foolish.
Yeah.
Meaning they're not born wise. I don't think they're born like sadomasochists, like murderers, but let's call it foolish.
But
right?
they're born selfish. Everyone has to teach them to share.
Yeah.
You're never teaching them to hoard.
Yeah.
So
no classes on being selfish are ever given in any household, and kids are getting A+ at it all the time.
Yeah.
So you have to teach them to be selfless, teach them to be self-controlled, teach them to be others-minded, teach them to be respectful to authority. So that's what a dad's doing there. He's giving instructions with boundaries and consequences.
Sure.
So you cross the line, consequence, because I want to communicate when you violate this rule, there's pain associated with it.
Right.
Because if you violate, let's call it respect for authority. If you don't respect your mom's authority, you might disrespect law enforcement's authority in 10 or 20 years and get shot. Rightfully so.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, because now you're a threat to society.
Yeah. And those fatherless homes, kids who grow up with their father, that's who's filling our prison systems right
That's
now.
exactly right. Yeah. But as it changes, it moves from I move from giver of consequences. Now I call it like control. I just want to keep my kids alive. You know what I mean?
Good.
Like let's keep the 2-year-old from like throwing himself off a bridge or running into traffic.
No fork in the electrical outlet.
100%.
1-year-old.
Yep. So then I moved to like coach. Now they're still on my field, on my court, running my playbook, right?
Yeah.
Doing what I say to do, but I'm on a sideline there on the court.
And traditionally, this is more, if you've done well, this is teenage years to...
Yeah, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there.
If you're
13.
doing well.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
And so...
Yep. And so we're working on that because I'm moving them toward differentiating, where I want them to be on their own, right? Where they come back to me for wise counsel. Okay. He's well-read, he's thoughtful, he's curious.
I know.
I went from high control to coach to counsel. Yeah. So when he comes to ask me questions, I don't give an answer. Yeah. I say, well, what do you think? Yeah. Well, I'm wanting to push him to draw on the faculties I've given him in books and reading and resources and wisdom and experience and principles, because I want him to get used to me not being there. So the goal is then friendship with your children. If you start friends, you lose them. Yeah, for sure. They've got enough friends. They need a dad. But if you're moving toward friendship, then you win them for a lifetime. So my dad's still one of my best friends. Yeah. And when I get stuck, I call him. Right. And when I have a big win, I want to call him. That is such a freak. Like everyone's watching right there. I'm like, well, congratulations. I didn't have it. Like that's, you know what a freak that is. That people don't have that. Like every home I know is broken in some way. And so, the blessing, first off, your father gave to you. That is really remarkable. And then you've improved even on that, which is incredible. Of you just opened up your battle plan of how you bring your sons and daughters through intentional living. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, did you have this published? It's like written in stone, like you wrote it. It's like a team of authors got together. It's so intentional. Yeah. And I'm like, man, a lot. And it looks kind of fun to do with your kids too. I'm like, this is really great stuff. I want our boys to know who we are. I don't want to forget I get the why, but most men wouldn't ever stay still long enough to make an intentional. No, let's have a battle plan for how we are, raised, and we're all on the same page. We've got all the things that you listed out to even think to do it, but then to actually do it and make it a regular check-in. Yeah. And it looks actually quite fun. Yeah, it's a blast. Here's what I would tell every dad listening: every dad can be the dad they wish they had. That's great. Everyone. Yeah. Everyone. There's no victims. You can be a remarkable rock star dad. If a dad wants to break generational curses, and if he wants to prevent himself from wounding his son unintentionally, be open with your son. That's son, good. I like that. I know I'm not perfect. And here's the deal. if I make a mistake, my commitment to you is I'm going to own it.
That's good.
Because I'm not a perfect man, but I'm following the perfect man, Jesus Christ, and I'm endeavoring to be more like him. And when I fall short, I'm willing to admit it because my identity isn't being perfect. Yeah. My identity is being found in being a loved and adopted child of God. So when you're receiving the love of the Father, you have love to give as a father.
That's great.
Yeah.
Let's let that be the last word of this main content. Guys, thanks so much for listening. We got a lot more in this show that you are missing. Our Q and Ambush section, which is questions from you guys. Those women are going extinct. They're gone.
Well, I don't think they're gone. I don't want to discourage guys. I think they're still around. And here's what I would say.
And also our hot topic section, you're not going to want to miss it.
This country marks 2 years since the Dobbs decision.
Oh, it's my body, my choice. I'm like, no, that the baby is not your body. To get the rest of the show, you're going to have to support us. We really appreciate it if you would put skin in the game and help us with this movement. You guys get to choose the winners out there. Woke entertainment companies or guys like us, little guys, we need your support. So if you would go over to watchwpsn.com, that's watchwpsn.com, sign up. You'll get the rest of this show, The John Lovell Show, all of our other shows, and a whole bunch of training classes from me and from other trainers in the industry that we deem amazing and spectacular. It's a fantastic value. Sign up for a year. We'd appreciate it, and we will see you next time, guys.